When Jackie Chan walked into that gym, nobody paid much attention. He was not the biggest man in the room. He was not the loudest. He wore an old gray hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low, and he moved quietly to the back corner and began wrapping his hands the way he had done 10,000 times before. Just a man. Just a morning. Just another workout that nobody would remember. But one man noticed him. 130 kilograms of muscle. Hands like sledgehammers. A chest like the front of a truck. He had been watching Jackie from across the gym since the moment he walked in. And something about what he saw, something about the way the other people in that room smiled when they recognized that face, made something dark and dangerous begin to move behind his eyes. He put down his weights. He walked across the gym slowly. He stopped 3 feet from Jackie Chan, close enough to cast a shadow that swallowed Jackie completely. And he leaned down. And in front of everyone in that gym, in a voice that was cold and flat and absolutely certain, he said 4 words that nobody in that room expected. "You're just a clown." Everything stopped. The weights stopped moving. The ropes stopped spinning. The air itself seemed to freeze where it was and wait. Every single person in Seoul's gym on Hart Street turned to see what Jackie Chan, one of the greatest martial artists who ever lived, a man who had trained under legends, a man who had broken nearly every bone in his body, doing things nobody else would attempt, was going to do next. And what he did, 5 seconds later, was something that nobody in that room had ever seen before. Something that made a 130-kilogram man begin to cry. Something that had nothing to do with fighting, and everything to do with what a man named Bruce Lee once whispered to a frightened 18-year-old boy on the steps behind a film set in Hong Kong in 1972. What happened in those 5 seconds will change the way you think about strength forever. But you have to watch the whole story to understand why. Jackie Chan arrived at Seoul's gym at 6:50 that morning. He wore a gray hoodie, old training shoes, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He signed in at the front desk using a name that was not his own. He had done this for years. In London, in New York, in Tokyo, whenever he wanted to be nobody for a few hours. Marco Reyes glanced at the name on the sign-in sheet, glanced at the face beneath the cap, and then said nothing. Seoul had been clear about that on Marco's first day. Famous people come here because we treat them like people. Keep doing that. Jackie nodded once at Marco and walked to the back corner of the gym. He moved quietly. That was the first thing you noticed about him if you didn't know who he was. Not the way he looked, not his size, he was not a big man, but the way he moved through a space without disturbing it. Like water finding the lowest, easiest path. 30 years of training had done that to his body. It had also done other things less easy to see. He sat on the bench at the far wall and began wrapping his hands. The tape made a soft sound in the quiet gym. Rip, rap, rip, rap. It was a sound Jackie had heard 10,000 times, and it calmed him, the way familiar sounds calm people who have learned that the world is not always a calm place. He had not been sleeping well. A film review had been published 3 weeks earlier. A long review, mostly kind, but with one sentence buried in the middle that Jackie had read once and then could not stop reading. The critic had called his performance, and Jackie remembered the exact words without trying to, charming in the way a circus act is charming. Watchable, energetic, and ultimately weightless. The word the critic had not used was clown. He hadn't needed to. Jackie finished wrapping his left hand and looked up. That was when he saw it, the photograph on the back wall. Small, faded. A young man, lean and laughing, Standing in this exact gym with his arms folded and his eyes lit up like he had just thought of something wonderful. Jackie had noticed it on his first morning here. He had not said a word about it to Sol, or Marco, or anyone. He didn't need to say anything. He knew that face better than he knew most faces in the world. He looked at it for 3 full seconds. Then he looked away and got to work. Some griefs, he had learned, you carry standing up. Dmitri Voss arrived at Sol's gym at 7 a.m. exactly. He always arrived at 7 a.m. exactly. Not 6:58, not 7:02. Marco had noticed this in the first week and stopped being surprised by it in the second. Some people use punctuality the way other people use silence, as a wall between themselves and a world that has stopped making sense. Dmitri did not smile at Marco, and he had not smiled at Marco in 4 months. He had not smiled at anyone in 4 months. Marco had learned not to take it personally. Sul had explained it in the quiet, careful way Sul explained most things. Standing at the window with a cup of tea, not looking at Marco directly. "That man is not angry," Sul had said. "He is underwater. There is a difference. Angry men make noise. Drowning men go very, very quiet." Dmitri set his gym bag against the base of the squat rack. Same spot. Every morning. The bag was old. Black canvas with a broken zip on the front pocket that he had fixed with a safety pin. Taped to the side of it, smooth and careful, was a piece of paper. A child's drawing. A horse, mid-gallop. The legs stretched in 4 directions, the way children draw horses when they have never seen one run, but can feel what running should look like. The horse was purple. Every part of it, mane, tail, hooves, colored in thick, confident purple crayon. Marco had never asked about the drawing. He had wanted to, many times. But some questions, he was learning, are not really questions. They are doors, and it is not always your door to open. Dmitri loaded the squat bar. He loaded it the way he did everything, methodically, without wasted movement. Plate after plate. The bar bent slightly under the weight, which was enormous, which was the point. Dmitri had been a weightlifter in another life. And not quite the Olympics. A knee injury at 24 had ended that story 2 chapters too early, but close enough that his body still remembered what it was built for. The gym was the one place that memory felt useful instead of cruel. He had come to America 11 years ago from Kharkiv, with 2 bags and a phone number for a cousin in Los Angeles, who turned out to have moved to Phoenix. He had stayed anyway. He had found work. He had found Irina, small, sharp-eyed, funnier than anyone he had ever met, at a Ukrainian community dinner where the food was bad and the music was worse, and somehow that had made everything better. They had built something together, slowly, carefully. The way people build things when they know how easily things fall. They had built Anya, 9 years old, loved horses, drew them purple because, she said once, very seriously, purple was the color of things that were special and fast. 4 months ago, on a Wednesday morning, 3 blocks from their apartment, Anya was gone. And the part of Dmitri that knew how to feel anything except pain went with her. Bruce Lee laughed a lot. That was the thing people never expected when they heard that name. They expected stillness, intensity, the focused quiet of a man permanently ready for something. And those things were true. Jackie had seen them up close, and they were absolutely true. But before any of that, before the stillness settled in, Bruce Lee laughed, easily and often, and with his whole face. Jackie was 18 years old the first time he stood near him. It was 1972. A film set in Hong Kong, loud and crowded and smelling of cigarette smoke and takeaway noodles going cold in paper boxes. Jackie was a stuntman, no name on any poster, no chair with his name on the back. He was a body, a useful, trained, expendable body whose job was to fall down convincingly and get up quickly and not complain about either. He was good at the job. He was not yet good at knowing what the job was actually teaching him. Bruce Lee was already the biggest star in Asia. He did not behave like it. He moved through that film set the way a teacher moves through a classroom, noticing things, stopping to look, asking questions that seemed small until you thought about them later and realized they were enormous. He knew the camera operator's name. He knew which stuntman had trained where and for how long. He paid attention the way very few famous people pay attention, not to be polite, but because he was genuinely, helplessly curious about other people. He looked at Jackie once, across the busy set, and nodded. Jackie nearly fell over a cable. A week into filming, Bruce Lee asked the stunt team if anyone wanted to spar. Light contact, just movement. Jackie stepped forward before his brain had fully agreed to it. His body made the decision, and his brain caught up 2 seconds later, already regretting it. The session lasted 4 minutes. Bruce Lee did not hurt him. He barely touched him. But he moved in a way that Jackie had no answer for, not because the techniques were secret or impossible, but because there was no gap between the thinking and the doing. Most fighters, Jackie had learned, think and then move. Bruce Lee had removed the comma between those two things entirely. Watching him was like watching water pour. It simply went where it went. See, afterwards, they sat on the steps behind the set. "You move well," Bruce said. He was breathing normally. Jackie was not. "But you're still fighting the other person." Jackie waited. "Don't fight the person," Bruce said. "Fight the moment. The person is just where the moment is happening." Jackie nodded like he understood. He did not understand. He understood it later. Much later. At 35, at 40. Each year a little more. 2 weeks after the sparring session, a stuntman, older, broader, carrying an anger Jackie never learned the source of, cornered Jackie behind the equipment shed, called him worthless, useless, said he moved like a child pretending, and would never be anything else. Jackie's hands had closed, his weight had shifted, his body was already making the old decision. Then footsteps. Bruce Lee came around the corner, and he looked at the other stuntman. He looked at Jackie. He let the silence do the heavy work for a moment. Then he said the thing that Jackie would carry for the rest of his life. The thing that would come back to him, decades later, in a cold gym on Hart Street, in the 5 seconds after a broken man called him a clown. When someone screams at you, really screams, listen to what they're not saying. That's where the real fight is, and that fight is never yours to win. It belongs to them. The other stuntman left. Jackie stood very still. Bruce Lee straightened his collar, looked at Jackie one more time with those paying attention eyes, and walked back to the set. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. Jackie found out from a phone call. He sat down on the floor of a small room in a building he barely remembered later, and stayed there for a long time. The grief was large and also confusing, because Bruce had barely known his name. 2 conversations. 1 sparring session. That was the sum of it. But Bruce had looked at him. Really looked. And that is the kind of thing that doesn't measure itself in hours. Jackie never said everything he wanted to say about that. Some doors, he had learned, you find already closed. You spend the rest of your life standing outside them, wishing you had knocked sooner. Soul's Gym on Hart Street was not a place that tried to impress anyone. The ceiling was low. The walls were bare brick painted over once in white, sometime in the 1980s, and not painted since. The floor was rubber tile, dark and scuffed in the places where the heaviest work happened, which told you everything about who trained here and how seriously they took it. There were no mirrors, no television screens mounted in the corners playing music videos, no smoothie bar, no membership tiers with names like Silver or Elite or Platinum. There was iron. There was space. There was light, mostly. One fluorescent tube above the squat rack flickered every few minutes, a small persistent malfunction that Sewell had been meaning to fix for 2 years and had quietly decided he never would. It had become, without anyone agreeing to this, a kind of clock. You knew how long you had been training by how many times the light had flickered. Sol Tanaka was 61 years old and had owned this gym for 31 of them. He was a small man, compact and unhurried, yet with hands that looked like they had moved serious weight for serious years, which they had. He did not give motivational speeches. He did not put quotes on the walls. He believed, privately and firmly, that inspiration was something you either brought through the door with you or you didn't, and no poster had ever changed that. He ran the gym the way a good harbor master runs a harbor, keeping things safe, keeping things honest, staying out of the water himself. Marco Reyes had worked the front desk for 7 months. He was 22, studying nothing officially, but reading everything unofficially. He kept a small blue notebook behind the counter where he wrote down things he noticed. Fragments, moments, the way a person's shoulders changed when they thought nobody was watching. He wanted to be a screenwriter. He did not yet know that the most important thing he would ever write in that notebook was about to happen. He picked up his pen without knowing why. For the first hour, they existed in the same space without existing in the same world. Jackie was in the back corner, moving through forms, slow, deliberate movements that looked from a distance like something between prayer and dance. His hands traced shapes in the air that had names most people in this gym would not have recognized. Each movement connected to the next, the way words connect in a sentence. Nothing wasted, nothing without meaning. He was not performing. He was thinking out loud with his body, the way he had always thought best. Dmitri was at the squat rack. He trained the way he did everything since losing Anya, with a ferocity that had nothing to do with fitness. He was not here to get stronger. He was already as strong as a man needed to be. He was here because the weight was the only thing that talked back in a language he still understood. Load the bar. Get under it. Hold the whole world on your shoulders for a few seconds. Put it down. Repeat. There was honesty in that equation that the rest of his life had stopped offering him. Marco watched both of them from behind his desk. He had a gift. He was only beginning to understand how rare it was, for reading a room the way other people read a page. He could feel the temperature of a space, the way tension gathered in certain corners, the way two people who had never spoken could still be in a conversation their bodies were having without permission. He opened his notebook. He wrote 3 words and stopped. Something is coming. And he didn't know what. He closed the notebook. He opened it again. At 7:10 a.m., a teenage boy came through the door. He was perhaps 16, loud in the harmless way of someone who hadn't yet learned that not every room wants filling. He spotted Jackie within 30 seconds. His face changed entirely. The way young faces change when the world suddenly confirms something they had only believed from a screen. He approached carefully, respectfully, and asked in a low voice if he could take a photograph. Jackie said yes. He always said yes to the young ones. They took the photograph. The boy laughed, a bright, uncomplicated sound, and said, "My little sister is going to love this. She thinks you are absolutely hilarious." He meant it as the best thing he could say. Why, he had no way of knowing what the word hilarious would do when it crossed the gym and reached a man standing under a bent bar with Dmitri walked the length of the gym slowly. Not slowly, like a man who was unsure. Slowly, like a man who had made a decision and was giving himself one last chance to unmake it, and kept finding he couldn't. His water bottle hung from his right hand. His left hand was open at his side, fingers slightly curled. The way hands curl when the rest of the body is preparing for something the mind hasn't fully announced yet. The other gym members felt it before they saw it. That is how real tension works. It arrives in the body first, in the back of the neck and the base of the stomach, before the eyes have gathered enough information to explain it. One by one, without speaking or signaling to each other, the people stopped what they were doing. The ropes went still. The free weights settled. Even the air in the room seemed to slow down and pay attention. Marco's hand found his notebook. Dmitri stopped 3 feet from Jackie Chan. Up close, the size difference was something you felt rather than just saw. Dmitri cast a shadow in the fluorescent light that fell over Jackie completely, the way a cloud moves across something small and bright on the ground. He looked down. Jackie looked up. Neither of them spoke for a moment that stretched itself thin. Then Dmitri spoke. "I know who you are," he said. His voice was low and accented and absolutely steady, which was the most frightening thing about it. Steady voices in unsteady moments mean a person has passed through the shaking already and come out the other side of it, somewhere cold. Everyone laughs at you. You jump around, you fall down. People laugh. You are famous, he said, for people laughing at you. He paused. Something moved across his face, something that was not quite anger, though it wore anger's clothes, something older and rawer and far more dangerous than simple anger, because anger has a ceiling, and this did not. "You're just a clown." The words landed in the silence like stones dropped into still water. Marco stopped breathing. Across the gym, nobody moved. The fluorescent light above the squat rack flickered once, as if flinching, and went still again. And then the 5 seconds began. 1. Jackie did not step back. His feet stayed exactly where they were, planted on the scuffed rubber floor. And this small fact, this refusal of the body to retreat, changed the temperature of the room in a way that was hard to explain but impossible to miss. 2. His hands stayed open at his sides. The tape around his knuckles was white and clean. His fingers did not curl. This, too, was a choice, though it looked like stillness. 3. His face changed. Not into anger. Not into the performance of calm that people put on when they are frightened and need not to seem it. Something underneath both of those things. Something that looked, impossibly, in this moment, in this room, like recognition. Like a man who has just heard a word he knows, from somewhere deep and private and old. 4. His eyes moved, just slightly, just for half a second. Down and to the left, to the gym bag sitting against the base of the squat rack 6 feet away. To the piece of paper taped to its side. To the purple horse, mid-gallop, drawn in thick, confident crayon by a hand that was small and certain and gone. 5. Jackie Chan raised his right hand slowly, open, palm forward, fingers together, and placed it flat and quiet against the center of Dmitri Voss's chest. Dmitri did not move. Nobody in the gym moved. Jackie leaned forward slightly, the way you lean toward someone when what you are about to say belongs only to them. His lips moved. 7 words came out, so quietly that Marco, standing 12 feet away with his pen pressed hard against his notebook, could not hear a single one. What happened next Marco would try to describe in his notebook every day for 3 weeks, and never once get fully right. Dimitri Voss, 130 kilograms of man. A person who had not cried once in 4 months, who had held himself together through sheer physical force, the way you hold a cracked thing together with your bare hands, made a sound. Small. Broken. Like something that had been sealed for a very long time had finally, with the lightest possible pressure, come open. And then he began to cry. Word count, 500. The chapter lands its cliffhanger not through dramatic action, but through its precise opposite. A hand placed quietly on a chest. 7 words nobody can hear. And a giant of a man coming apart at the seams. The reader is now holding 3 unanswered questions simultaneously. What were the 7 words? How did Jackie know to say them? And what does the purple horse mean? All 3 answers are earned and withheld until Chapter 9, where they converge. The 5-second countdown, promised in the prologue and teased in the outline, is here rendered beat by beat in its full emotional detail. Each second is a separate paragraph, a separate physical choice, building the reader toward the moment with a patience that makes the payoff feel inevitable rather than surprising. Shall I continue with Chapter 7? The weight that no bar can hold at 500 words, where Dimitri's story finally comes out of him in pieces, and the purple horse is explained at last. Dimitri walked the length of the gym slowly. Not slowly like a man who was unsure. Slowly like a man who had made a decision and was giving himself one last chance to unmake it, and kept finding he couldn't. His water bottle hung from his right hand. His left hand was open at his side, fingers slightly curled, and the way hands curl when the rest of the body is preparing for something the mind hasn't fully announced yet. The other gym members felt it before they saw it. That is how real tension works. It arrives in the body first, in the back of the neck and the base of the stomach, before the eyes have gathered enough information to explain it. One by one, without speaking or signaling to each other, people stopped what they were doing. The ropes went still. The free weights settled. Even the air in the room seemed to slow down and pay attention. Marco's hand found his notebook. Dimitri stopped 3 feet from Jackie Chan. Up close, the size difference was something you felt rather than just saw. Dimitri cast a shadow in the fluorescent light that fell over Jackie completely, the way a cloud moves across something small and bright on the ground. He looked down. Jackie looked up. Neither of them spoke for a moment that stretched itself thin. Then Dimitri spoke. "I know who you are," he said. His voice was low and accented and absolutely steady, which was the most frightening thing about it. Steady voices in unsteady moments mean a person has passed through the shaking already and come out the other side of it somewhere cold. Everyone laughs at you. You jump around, you fall down, people laugh. You are famous, he said, for people laughing at you. He paused. Something moved across his face, something that was not quite anger, though it wore anger's clothes, something older and rawer and far more dangerous than simple anger, because anger has a ceiling, and this did not. "You're just a clown." The words landed in the silence like stones dropped into still water. So Marco stopped breathing. Across the gym, nobody moved. The fluorescent light above the squat rack flickered once, as if flinching, and went still again. And then the 5 seconds began. 1. Jackie did not step back. His feet stayed exactly where they were, planted on the scuffed rubber floor, and this small fact, this refusal of the body to retreat, changed the temperature of the room in a way that was hard to explain, but impossible to miss. 2. His hands stayed open at his sides. The tape around his knuckles was white and clean. His fingers did not curl. This too was a choice, though it looked like stillness. 3. His face changed. Not into anger, not into the performance of calm that people put on when they are frightened and need not to seem it. Something underneath both of those things. Something that looked impossibly, in this moment, in this room, like recognition. Like a man who has just heard a word he knows from somewhere deep and private and old. 4. His eyes moved, just slightly, just for half a second. Down and to the left, to the gym bag sitting against the base of the squat rack 6 feet away, to the piece of paper taped to its side, to the purple horse, mid-gallop, drawn in thick, confident crayon by a hand that was small and certain and gone. 5. Jackie Chan raised his right hand slowly, open, palm forward, fingers together, and placed it flat and quiet against the center of Dmitri Voss's chest. Dmitri did not move. Nobody in the gym moved. Jackie leaned forward slightly, the way you lean toward someone, when what you are about to say belongs only to them. His lips moved. 7 words came out, so quietly that Marco, standing 12 feet away with his pen pressed hard against his notebook, could not hear a single one. What happened next, Marco would try to describe in his notebook every day for 3 weeks and never once get fully right. Dmitri Voss, 130 kilograms of man, a person who had not cried once in 4 months, who had held himself together through sheer physical force the way you hold a cracked thing together with your bare hands. Made a sound. Small. Broken. Like something that had been sealed for a very long time, had finally, with the lightest possible pressure, come open. And then he began to cry. Sol Tanaka appeared from the back office without being called. That was the thing about Sol. He had spent 31 years reading the temperature of a room through a closed door. He came out quietly, a towel folded over one forearm, and took in the scene in a single unhurried glance. Jackie standing close. Dimitri's shoulders shaking. The stillness of everyone else. Sol did not say a word. He walked to the front door, turned the sign from open to closed with the careful gentleness of someone performing a small and necessary ceremony, and came back to stand near the desk. He looked at the 3 other gym members. They collected their things and left through the side door without being asked. That was the thing about Sol's regulars. They understood, without needing it explained, when a room had become something private. Marco stayed behind his desk and did not move. Jackie guided Dmitri to the bench beside the squat rack. Not by pulling or pushing, just by angling his own body gently in that direction, the way you guide water by changing the shape of the ground beneath it. Dmitri sat. The bench creaked under his weight. He put his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands, and for a long moment, the only sound in Sol's gym was the sound of a very large man trying to hold himself together, and finding he no longer had the strength for it. Then the words started coming. They came out the way things come out after being held too long, not in clean sentences, but in pieces, with silences between them that were as heavy as the words themselves. A name first. Anya. Just the name, twice, quietly. Then the age. 9. Then the morning. 4 months ago. A Wednesday. Running late. No time to stop. She asked for hot chocolate, Dmitri said. His voice was barely a voice. It was something underneath a voice. We were late. I said next time. He stopped. Jackie did not fill the silence. He had learned, over many years, and from one very specific teacher, that some silences are not empty. They are full of something the other person needs space to carry. There was no next time, Dmitri said. He told it slowly after that. The accident. 3 blocks. Irina's broken arm. The hospital waiting room with its terrible lighting and its paper cups of cold coffee. The way the doctor's face looked before the doctor had said a single word, and how that face had told him everything, and how he had known but still waited to hear it spoken because some part of him believed that if it was not yet spoken, it was not yet completely real. He talked about Irina, how she kept saying it was not her fault, how Dmitri knew she was right and could not make his mouth form the words to tell her so, because forming those words meant opening a door he was terrified lived behind it, a darkness he would never find his way back out of. He talked about the gym. Here, he said, looking at the scuffed floor between his feet. The weight is real. I understand the weight. I put it on the bar, and I pick it up, and it is exactly as heavy as it looks. Nothing here pretends. He exhaled. Everything else pretends. Then he looked at the gym bag. His eyes stayed on the purple horse for a long moment before he spoke again. She drew horses, he said. And then, very quietly, he corrected himself. She draws, she drew. The correction cost him something visible. Every horse was purple. I asked her why purple. And she said, purple is the color of things that are special and fast. A sound came out of him that was almost a laugh and almost something else entirely. I don't know why I bring it. I cannot leave it at home. At home, it is too quiet. He looked at Jackie for the first time since sitting down. I am sorry, he said. What I said. It was not about you. Jackie nodded once, slowly. Let us go back to the 5 seconds. Not from Marco's side of the room this time. Not from the outside, watching a small man stand still beneath a large man's shadow. From the inside. From the place where Jackie Chan lived. Behind the eyes. Behind the wrapped hands. Behind the face that Marco had written in his notebook, as softened and spent 3 weeks trying to explain more precisely, and could not. The first second. And the word clown arrived, and it landed exactly where Dmitri had thrown it, in the oldest, most unguarded part of Jackie's chest. The part that was still 18 years old and standing on a film set hoping nobody noticed he was afraid. The part that had read that critic's review not once but 11 times, the way you press a bruise to confirm it is still there. For half a heartbeat, something in Jackie's hands wanted to act on habit. 30 years of training had given his body a set of answers to certain kinds of moments. Those answers were fast and certain and final. He did not use them, because in the same half-heartbeat, something else arrived. Something that moved faster than habit, and had been living in him longer. He looked at Dmitri's eyes. The second. And Jackie Chan had been in enough rooms with enough people carrying enough different kinds of pain to know the difference between a man who wanted to hurt someone and a man who was already hurt and had simply run out of places to put it. The distinction was in the eyes. Anger makes eyes hard and bright, like light on metal. Grief makes them red and slightly unfocused, like a person who is looking at you and also looking through you at something only they can see. Dmitri's eyes were not hard. They were red. They were somewhere else. They were the eyes of a man standing in one room and living in another. The 3rd second. Jackie's hands stayed open. This was not a decision he made consciously. It was the residue of something Bruce Lee had said on those steps behind the film set. Words that had spent 25 years becoming not a memory, but an instinct. Fight the moment. Not the person. The moment was not a threat. The moment was a drowning man making the sound that drowning men make when they have been underwater long enough and quietly enough that the sound surprises even themselves. The 4th second. His eyes found the gym bag. The purple horse. Jackie had noticed it on his first morning at Soul's gym and filed it away in the part of his mind that collected things without yet knowing why. Now, standing inside this moment, the filing cabinet opened. No adult tapes a child's drawing to a gym bag unless that drawing is the most precious object they own. And nobody is that careful with something they can still ask for more of. The shape of Dimitri's loss assembled itself in Jackie's mind in less than a second. Complete. Exact. The way a picture becomes clear when you finally step back far enough to see the whole of it. And then Bruce Lee's voice arrived. Not as a memory with edges and distance, as something immediate and close, the way a voice sounds when it is in the same room as you. When someone screams at you, really screams, listen to what they're not saying. That's where the real fight is. And that fight is never yours to win. It belongs to them. The 5th second. Jackie thought about a door. His door. The one he had found closed for 25 years. The one he had stood outside of since July 20th, 1973. Wishing he had knocked when the knocking was still possible. Wishing he had found the words while there was still someone on the other side to receive them. He had carried that particular silence so long and so quietly that it had become part of the architecture of who he was. A room inside him with no light and no handle that he passed every day and had learned not to look at directly. He looked at it now, and then he raised his hand and placed it against Dimitri's chest, and he gave away the thing he had never been able to give to the person he had most wanted to give it to. The thing he had practiced 1,000 times in the silence of that closed room, standing outside a door that would never open again. He gave it to Dimitri instead, because Bruce Lee had taught him that the greatest technique is knowing when to stop fighting and when to simply show up, present, open, to and without armor. In the exact moment, another person needs to feel less alone in the world than they have ever felt before. Soul Tanaka, watching from the doorway of his office, reached up and quietly wiped his eyes. He had seen 1,000 men make 1,000 decisions in moments like this one. He had never seen anyone make that one. They sat together on that bench for a long time. The gym was quiet, in a way it had never quite been quiet before. Not the ordinary quiet of early morning, of equipment waiting to be used, and a day not yet begun. This was a different kind of quiet, the kind that settles after something true has been said out loud in a room, the kind that has weight and warmth to it, the way a blanket has weight and warmth, and serves the same purpose. Dimitri had stopped crying. He was not embarrassed. No, that surprised him, the not being embarrassed. He had spent 4 months being terrified of exactly this, of the moment the walls came down and the thing inside got out, certain that when it finally happened, he would feel exposed and ashamed and smaller than before. Instead, he felt something he had no precise word for. Not better, not fixed, but lighter, in the specific way that a person feels lighter when they have been carrying something alone, and someone has simply placed their hand on it alongside them. Not taken it, just touched it, just acknowledged its reality and its weight. Jackie spoke quietly. He told Dimitri about Bruce Lee. Not the legend, not the films, not the philosophy that had been written about in 1,000 books. The real thing. A film set in Hong Kong in 1972. Steps behind a building. 4 minutes of sparring that had rearranged something permanent inside a frightened 18-year-old boy. 2 sentences that had taken 25 years to become fully understood. He talked for 20 minutes. Dmitri listened the way a person listens when they are hearing something that was always true, but that nobody had ever put into words in front of them before. When Jackie finished, the gym was still. The flickering light above the squat rack had stopped flickering entirely. Saul learned what the 7 words were 3 days later. He told Marco on a quiet Friday morning, standing at the window with his tea going cold, not looking at Marco directly. The way Saul always told the things that mattered. Marco wrote them in his notebook immediately, unpressing the pen harder than usual, as if he needed them to go all the way through the page and stay there permanently. The 7 words were not inspirational. They were not clever or poetic, or the kind of thing you put on a poster or embroider on a cushion. They were the truest thing Jackie Chan had ever said to a stranger. And they were true because a man named Bruce Lee had made them true for him first, and because grief, real grief, the kind that restructures the bones, is one of the few things in this world that is genuinely the same for everyone who carries it, regardless of who they lost or how. Jackie had leaned forward. He had placed his hand flat against the center of a broken man's chest. And he had said, "She knew you loved her. They always know." 7 words. Not because he could be certain they were true. He could not. He did not know Anya. He had never seen her face, or heard her voice, or watched her draw purple horses with the absolute confidence of someone who has decided that purple is the color of things that are special and fast. He could not know what she knew or felt or understood in her 9 years in the world. But he knew something else. He knew that he had never told Bruce Lee what that afternoon on the steps had meant, had never found the words while the words were still useful, had carried that silence for 25 years like a stone in a pocket, always there, always heavy, always present in the way that only unfinished things are present. And he knew, with the certainty of someone who has lived long enough inside a grief to understand its specific geography, that the silence had never meant the feeling wasn't there. And the feeling was always there. It simply never got spoken. So he spoke it now, 25 years late, to the wrong person, in the right moment. And in doing so, he gave Dmitri the thing he had most needed for 4 months and had not known how to ask for. Not answers, not comfort in the ordinary sense. Just the possibility, offered quietly, by a man who had reason to believe it, that the love had been felt, that it had landed, that the hot chocolate conversation, and the purple horses, and the 9 years of ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday mornings had been received and held and known, that the door, though closed, had never been empty on the other side. Saul put his tea down. He looked at Marco. "Some people spend their whole lives learning to fight," he said. "And then, one morning, they learn what fighting was always actually for." Marco looked down at the 7 words in his notebook. He did not write anything else on that page. It didn't need anything else. Dmitri Voss came back the next morning. He arrived at 7 a.m. exactly, the way he always had. He nodded at Marco. He set his gym bag against the base of the squat rack in the same spot he always set it. He loaded the bar. He trained. Nothing about the sequence was different from any other morning he had spent in this gym. Except one thing. When he left 2 hours later, he looked at Marco directly. Not through him, not past him, not at the general space Marco occupied behind the desk. At him. The way a person looks at another person when they have decided, quietly and without announcement, to return to the world of other people after a long time away from it. He did not smile. But something in his face had changed its quality. The way iron changes when it has been through fire. Same material, different character. Still heavy, still serious, but no longer sealed. Marco wrote one line in his notebook and closed it. 3 weeks later, he arrived for his morning shift and found the gym bag already in its spot beside the squat rack. He looked at it for a moment before he understood what was different. Beside the purple horse, still there, still taped carefully and smoothed flat, there was a second drawing. A horse, mid-gallop, done in the same purple crayon, but by a different hand. Older, less certain in its lines, trying to remember a style it had only ever observed and never practiced. Reaching for something just beyond its own ability and getting closer than it had any right to. Marco did not ask. He opened his notebook and wrote it down instead. Jackie trained at Saul's gym for 2 more weeks. On his last morning, he stood for a long time in front of the photograph on the back wall. The young man in it, lean and laughing, arms folded, eyes lit from within. Sul appeared beside him without being summoned, the way Sul always appeared when something was about to matter. They stood together in front of the photograph without speaking. "Did you know him well?" Jackie asked. His voice was quiet, careful. The voice of someone asking a question they already know the shape of the answer to. "No," Sul said, just enough to know he was paying attention when nobody else was. Jackie nodded, and he reached up and straightened the photograph. It had always hung slightly crooked, a small persistent lean to the left that nobody had corrected in 20 years. His fingers stayed on the frame for a moment after it was straight. Then he let go. He picked up his bag. He walked to the front door. He paused with his hand on the handle and looked back once, at the photograph, at the squat rack, at the gym bag with its 2 purple horses, at Marco standing behind the desk with his pen and his notebook and his gift for noticing what a room is really saying beneath what it appears to be saying. Then he walked out into the morning. The door closed behind him. The fluorescent light above the squat rack, the one that had flickered for 2 years, the one that had flinched when Dmitri spoke, and held its breath when Jackie raised his hand and stayed still through everything that followed, did not flicker once. It simply burned, steady and clean and quiet, the way things burn when they have finally found their purpose. Marco opened his notebook to the last used page. He read back what he had written on the morning of that Tuesday in January, the morning of the 5 seconds, the purple horse, the 7 words, and the unthinkable thing that turned out to be the most human thing he had ever seen one person do for another. He added one final line. The hardest technique is the open hand. He closed the notebook. Sul came and stood beside him and looked out through the front window at the street where Jackie Chan had just been, and was no longer. The morning was cold and bright, and going about its business the way mornings do, indifferent to the extraordinary things that happen inside ordinary buildings on ordinary days. "Good man," Sul said. He meant both of them. He meant all 3 of them. He went back to his office and closed the door softly behind him. The gym opened for the day. The light burned steady. And that is the story of what really happened in those 5 seconds. Not a fight, not a trick. Just one man carrying his own quiet grief, choosing to open his hand instead of close it. Bruce Lee would have understood exactly why. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, where in the world are you watching this from right now? Let us see how far kindness travels. If this story moved you even a little, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Every share puts this story in front of someone who might need it today. And somebody out there always needs it today. The video you should watch next is appearing on your screen right now. I will see you there. Will.